Happy New Year. It is 2024, and with the new year comes updates and upgrades to some of the essential tools that I and many other authors use for our indie journeys. So, today I'm going to be giving an updated overview of what has changed with AutoCrit, which is a program that helps you plan, write, and edit your novel since I was here in January of 2023. We're going to go ahead and dive right in. And while I'm signing over into my account, I want to clarify that while I am currently a member of the AutoCrit Author Services team, I'm one of their editors and I make a few appearances here and there. I'm not being compensated for making this video. If you click the links in the description box to sign up for a trial or something, I do not get any reimbursement for that. This is an open, honest experience that I'm not speaking for the company on. Speaking for myself on, because I've been a lifetime member paid out of my own pocket for years before joining the AutoCrit team. And it gets better and better every year, and I use it different ways for my novels every year. So you're going to see one of my real books that I'm working on in the Lord's Gambit series today, as well as some of the updates and some pros and things in progress that could be considered cons to really help you decide whether this is a tool you want to invest in for 2024. So right off the bat, I just want to say that AutoCrit welcomes both fiction and nonfiction writers. The nonfiction aspect is new. So if you watched my earlier videos before I was involved with the AutoCrit team, you know that it was really geared a lot toward fiction, and that has updated, especially in the last couple of months. We'll see more about that in the writer's desk shortly. But there have also been brand new tools brought in to help the planning and developmental editing with the bringing in of this story analyzer, which is like a beta reader for books. So let's jump into what is new in the world of AutoCrit. So as a basic overview, when you log in, you're going to find yourself on the AutoCrit hub. I've already clicked on Writer's Desk, which is on the left-hand side, but I can go back to the hub and show you that really briefly. This is the AutoCrit community, which you have access to if you're a AutoCrit Pro member, which is a monthly or an annual or a lifetime member. But the hub just gives you an idea of what's coming up with AutoCrit events, AutoCrit courses, AutoCrit challenges, things like that. Then there's a calendar. If you're an AutoCrit Pro member, meaning you are one of their monthly or annual or lifetime members, you have access to any instructor-led live clubs like the Accountability Club or the Mystery Club or the Fantasy Club or this special Hook 'em Live where we let our members come in and work on their pitches so that they can strengthen their pitches, are all included as perks under the membership. This year, there are more clubs than ever in the AutoCrit community. They've added romance as a new club for 2024. The accountability clubs, which are like their write-in sessions / editing sprint sessions, are adding a whole other night owl time on Mondays from 10 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. to meet that more international audience. There's romance, bringing back Pitch It, bringing back Hook 'em, bringing back Book Blender, which talks about the genre-bending categories. And so it's nice to see a variety of instructors, a variety of topics showing up for 2024 in the lives. Then there's the AutoCrit Academy, which I honestly haven't done a whole lot in as a writer. This is where they bring in writing instructors to do writing courses. Like Kara Crescent is coming to do a paranormal romance workshop starting January 24th. Daniel Kaplan is doing a mystery course. Gareth does horror genre courses. They are all exceptional instructors. I really recommend looking into these if you feel like you struggle with something and you want instruction. They are very reasonably priced, and you get permanent replays of any sessions you missed and any course content. And I do want to say that, as you see here, the Academy is broken out on its own. The AutoCrit Academy is not included with the AutoCrit Pro program. They are two separate programs. So the AutoCrit Pro memberships give you access to the writer's desk that you see up here in red, the community forums that we opened up on earlier, and the clubs that say club in the calendar. Anything under the Academy falls under AutoCrit Academy and is separate, although Pro members do get a discounted rate on almost all of those. And at the end of last year, AutoCrit did something really interesting. I don't know if they'll be bringing it back in 2024, but they did do a all access pass that gave members a chance to buy an annual pass to everything in the Academy for the entire year. So if you are looking for writing courses and you feel like that's more of your thing, definitely subscribe to their email list so that if they launch another one of those specials in the future, you can find out about it. But it is over and done now, so we're going to focus on the tools that are here today. And I might do a separate video if you have the All Access Pass and you want to know how that works, but I'm not going to go into detail on that today. So let's talk the big things. Let's talk about AutoCrit's features in the planning and the writing and the editing side of the writer's desk. And when you click on writer's desk, you're brought here where you can see, obviously, I have a bunch of files. I have 31 files, 463,000 total words across all of my files right now. But today, for you guys, I'm loading one in that I have never loaded in the system. You will see it real time, live, and raw, and this is a first draft, so please don't judge too harshly. Even USA Today bestselling authors have garbage drafts. So because I've already written some of this book offline in a Microsoft Word document, I'm going to upload it by clicking on the red Upload File button. You can upload a file as a .docx, a .rtf, or a .txt. What this means for writers who are using Scrivener or ProWriting or Google Docs is you need to export your file as a .docx in order to use the upload file feature. And when you do that, you need to make sure that you don't carry over anything but text, just text. That's it. If you have a title page that has a copy of your cover, that has a table of contents chart, if you have headers that have copyright by name in the book title, then maybe you're editing a little further on in the game. Usually you would edit before you have your formatter format your book for printing. And that is going to be one of the big things that I strongly recommend. If you are a writer who cannot wait to edit and format your book until the book's completely edited. If you're a writer who cannot wait to format until the book is completely edited, then this may not be quite what you're looking for at this point in time. It's really ideal for people who are doing the text-only versions of uploads. Now you can copy and paste your text into here, and that's something that I've done with books that are already out as well. I just don't copy the images. I go back to my pre-formatted versions, because when you get all of your edited files back from your editors, before you send them to your formatter or before you format them to yourself, you can do that. Now, AutoCrit has added several formatting features that you can use. I will show those today, but it will cause snags in the system if you try to do a whole bunch of advanced formatting in the file that you load. So just be aware of that when you dive in. So I'm going to drag and drop Vanguard of Justice, which is the third book in the Lord's Gambit series that I owe you guys for readers who are watching, into here. And don't worry, I'm only loading the first couple chapters into here so that you don't see what happens. Now there's a few different things. There's a few different aspects to this program that I want to point out really fast. There's a lot of tools in here, a lot, even more than there were when I did this recording last year. Do not try to do them all or you will get overwhelmed. It is too much. So instead, break them up into sections. And I have a checklist. I will include a link to that checklist in the description box of what reports I run for developmental editing, which reports in here I run for copy editing, which reports in here I run for line editing, and which ones I would run for proofreading. And I break those out for myself. I've now done 10 books here in AutoCrit, and that checklist is my personal checklist. It is not official, but it works for me. So starting out, though, chances are you're going to want a developmental edit style feedback of your book. And so that leads us to our first new tool, and perhaps the biggest new tool that AutoCrit has I can speak English, you guys, I promise, has rolled out in 2024. So we're going to delete my title page. I'm going to tell you why in just a second. I don't need that in there. So as you can see, I have pulled over my book. There's an opening. There are chapters. You see chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, and some of them don't have chapter numbers. Some of them have chapter names, like this one, Trading Fates. But all that is in here is the title, the text. I don't indent most of my text these days because my formatter charges me more money to unindent them so that they can then turn around and fix them correctly. And a dinkus that I have manually typed, not a nice uploaded image dinkus, but an actual typed dinkus, 3 asterisks or brackets or a tilde, which is a little swish to tell the system when there's either head hopping or a time skip or a big scene shift. That's important for the analyzer that I'm going to show you guys in just a second. So you've uploaded your file, you deleted anything in front of chapter 1. The first thing you need to do now is go up to this chapters drop down and click auto find chapters. This is going to search the document for anything titled chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4, etc. If you have something that is not titled with chapter, you can highlight it, click the plus sign, and click save. And it will add it as a chapter. One thing I do love, because you guys know I'm a pantser, I do not plan until the book is done and then I fix it in post. If you have a chapter that you need to change where it falls in the order, you can drag and drop. And then chapter 1 is now on top. If I want to fix it back, I can drag and drop again. And now Trading Fates is back at the top. So you can reorganize your chapters. And I'm only putting the first 2 chapters in here because, again, I don't want to spoil it for my readers if you're watching. Sorry, guys. All right. If you do not auto-find your chapters, the new developmental editing tool, the Story Analyzer, will not work. It does not matter that you already say chapters 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 150. It's not going to recognize it unless you do that. Second thing is the analyzer portion for the developmental editing side only works if you have chapters between 200 words and 10,000 words per chapter, not per book. AutoCrit has done away with the 100,000 word limit that has been spinning around on the old internet lately. There is no longer a limit to how many words you can have in a file, and the largest file I have ever personally uploaded into the system has been just over 250,000 words. Now, if you run a big file, it might slow down some of your reporting because AutoCrit is 100% web-based. There's nothing to download, which is great because it means I can save and log in from any device that I want. And I also save copies to my local drive just as a backup. But that also means that there might be a slight lag when you get into the 200,000 word range, just being perfectly transparent. So if you have some in-depth editing to do, what I've done is I have a master file like this. I go over to the save button. I do save as, and then I create a new project. So this one would be Vanguard of Justice, which creates a new folder. I would say chapters 3 through 7, or 2 to 5, or 1 to 2, or whatever it is, and then I would save. And then I would delete everything but that section, and that is what I would work through on my in-depth edits, and then I would export them, put them all in one file, look through all of them, send them to beta readers, see what the beta readers think, and come back and upload the corrected edited file into the system for one final read through on a surface level, like for proofreading. So, but you might experience a slight lag if you're going to try to run every single edit on a giant doorstopper book like mine. However, the books that I typically run through here of my own are in the 100 to 130,000 word range, and it usually runs the reports in 2 minutes or less. All right, now that we're in here, you'll see there's a bunch of toolbars. You've got options that we did not have. On a surface level, not only can you format what is a chapter header, what is a chapter subheader or a chapter name, and others in normal for regular text, but you can also tell the system to add indents now. So you can highlight your whole book. Actually, I'll just start here since this is the demo. I can highlight as much as I want. Go up to paragraph style. That's a new button. Click first line indent. And ta-da! It's indented my first line. You can also tell it to get rid of paragraph spacing. If you have spacing you don't want, you can adjust the space between your lines to match whatever an agent has asked of you before you export it. And as long as you click this save button or see the autosave going, which you'll see probably in a minute once I get going here, it will save. Then you can export it back out as .docx, and that formatting should stick. You should still have your indents. You should still have your chapter headings. You should still have your spacing. And because every agent or publisher, if you're going trad, is like traditionally published, requires a different spacing. Some want 1.15, 1.5, double space. It's as easy as highlighting the entire document with Control A on your keyboard and then clicking and changing it once. Same thing for fonts. You have access to most of the common fonts right here. And then you can change font sizes here as well. Bold, italics, and underlines are now available with the common control keyboard controls. So Control B for bold, Control I for italics, Control U for underline, just as if you were in a local document on your computer. Then you can clear all the formatting out of your piece by highlighting and clicking clear formatting. You can align things left, center, or right. You can put an extra indent in there or take an indent out if you've added too many. You can add in lists. It's really expanded a lot. So this is sort of the basic formatting that has now been built in that was not originally here. I love it. It's made my life a whole lot easier, and hopefully it will for you as well. One of the things that has not changed much is the ability to compare your book with the genre or against a specific author whose style you want to be very similar to in order to make sure you're meeting reader expectations. So you would go to that pencil right here on the right-hand side, comparing with genre, click there, and then you would see a list of fiction and nonfiction authors and genres. This one is fantasy, so I want it to be sort of darker. I could say I want this to be like Sanderson. I could say that I want this to be general fantasy. If you're writing sci-fi, you could have this be science fiction, mystery, etc. And if you write nonfiction, they don't just have one or two. They have a bunch. They have academic, biographies, business, health and wellness, self-help. They've got so many choices now, and they have added new authors this year. So it's been nice to see some expanded, especially in the realm of nonfiction, even though that's not really something I write. You guys might write it. Another new tool that you could use from the start if you don't have anything written at all, I'm going to scroll down here to the very end of chapter 1. You can click on this little number and you'll see the drop down. Let me click out of it. Word count / timer settings button. And you can now add the ability to track word count, which is up here on this top bar, word count 4,618. Show how many words you've deleted or added, and add a goal. So my goal is to write about 1,000 words a day in order to get these books done for you guys, like I've been trying to do. You can have it show a writing timer. If you want to set a timer for yourself and it will tell you when your timer's up, you could switch that to a Pomodoro timer if you're looking for a longer timer with breaks, with count ups or count downs. And then this next one, I want to hear whether you guys would use something like this. I have a love-hate relationship with positive reinforcement. I get very sad because I'm not as focused as I should be. So it will tell you how you're doing with your writing, and you have to, of course, be writing in the AutoCrit system for this to work. But as you see, it says my focus on my writing is dropping. The emojis get sadder and sadder, and then I'm like, oh, I've let down the emojis. But you can toggle that off or on, depending on whether you're editing or drafting. Essentially, it says I want to write 35 words a minute or however many words a minute. how many seconds you're allowed to pause before it starts to ding you up here going, you're not focused, you're not paying attention. So that can be really helpful for keeping on track with drafting. And that leads me to the next new tool for the drafting phase, which is the voice to text dictation that rolled out in October of 2023. When you click on this microphone and you click this microphone like I'm about to do on the live, it will track your words in dictation. And there it is at the end from wherever your text was. Now, of course, because I write fantasy and I have fantasy words, I do have to come in and touch this up. It's also improved my spoken English, I feel like, because you have to be clear in what you're speaking for it to pick it up correctly. The fact that I have an accent has made it a little trickier at times when my accent really comes out, like when I'm really tired. It will struggle a little more. And if you have a whole bunch of background noise when my toddlers are running around doing their thing and they're excited and they're like, yay, it's the end of the school day and all that stuff, then it can be a little harder. But because AutoCrit's web-based, one of the big pros to this is you can open your Google Chrome browser on your phone or your Firefox browser on your phone. You can log into AutoCrit, log into your project, scroll to the end, click at the end, hit the mic, and while you're cooking dinner, doing stuff around the house, as long as it's not noisy stuff, you can click the dictation button and you can be speaking your book and just go back and touch it up once you're done. So that is all new. Many of the other features are still the same. They've kept their text reader options where you can highlight up to 200 words at a time-ish without running into any errors to have it read your text aloud. And you can change settings for that. So you can change it to be read by UK English, US English, different types of voices. I think it's important to point out that this is not an e-reader. I wouldn't plug the book that you are wanting read to you in here and just click it and hope that it reads because it's going to be too long. It was made with editing in mind. That means that it's going to stop every once in a while so you can go back and fix the errors that you heard and not forget about them. A couple other new features in the writing side that have come up this year is there is a dark mode. So clicking on this editor theme button, I can switch to dark mode. Here's that. I can also switch to minimal to get rid of some of the excess stuff that I don't want cluttering the page. Like you see those gray margins, they just sort of go away. So I'm going to switch it back to page view. And you can save that. Down here in settings, you can still add your character names and other fantasy type words that you've created to an exclusion list so that it doesn't ding you for them as being wrong. And there's a smart thesaurus now. So before they had a thesaurus, you'd click on it and like every thesaurus would give you every single word that it could possibly be, even if it wasn't relevant. And let's say I didn't want to use the word frantically here because I'm trying to cut back on my adverbs. I can highlight the word frantically, click on the thesaurus, and now the thesaurus reads the sentence and suggests words based on the context of the sentence. Desperately or wildly could both work in this scene, so I could change either one if I needed to, or I could cut it out and show what she's feeling there without needing to really say as much. So those are all tools that have really come in to help on the writing phase. There's also an inspiration studio, which will help you if you get stuck. They have a what happens next feature that I want to be very clear does not write or rewrite your book for you in any way. If I click what happens next, it will give me some ideas that I can play around with in my head and maybe think what would happen if I took my story this direction. But it will not actually write. There's nothing there that you can copy or paste into your book, so you don't have to worry about plagiarism or anything like that. It's the same thing as if you sent your book to a friend and you said, I don't know where to go next with this, and your friend starts throwing out random ideas based on what they know of your story. So if she watches it horror, what if this happened? What if that happened? What if there was this kind of unexpected twist? What I think might happen based on your writing style up to this point in the story. what you could do to turn it completely on its head. Hey, random food fight in the middle of a boss battle. But it's just meant to be idea. And that's a really great distinction. As someone who does not write with or edit with any form of generative AI changing my work, I'm very careful about that. All right, so I'm going to close out of this. You can change the mood of your story. And again, this is not going to actually change anything. So I can change this from a horrifying scene and say, I want to bring surprise into this scene. I want her to be confused. Like, what is going on with this bad guy that she's fighting in the scene? I can click the run button and it will give me examples of places I could change within my book. So add vivid sensory details about what's going on in this scene that I wrote. It's not coming up with new stuff here. It's just giving me tips on how to change what I already have. And then they have the fiction story builder. This is essentially going to be where you come for your world building and planners. You will rejoice, I'm sure. I've started using this in combination with the new story analyzer, but you don't have to. The beat sheets are where I would start. I typically use character-centered beat sheets because I like to write the hero's journey as one of my main plot lines. Here's all my different beats. A beat is a plot point that is supposed to happen in a story by a specific point. And if you hover over the information button beside each of these, it will tell you exactly what these beats are. If you're missing a beat, or you have too many beats close together and then one that's super stretched out, it can mean your pacing is off. Your pacing's too fast, your pacing's too slow. It can mean you skipped a vital piece of information and now something feels off about your book, but you don't know what. So before, I was having to write the book and then go back and manually plot all this out to try to fix it myself. Now I can use the story analyzer, which is what I'm about to show you guys, to do a developmental edit for me. And then I come back and refer to the sheet in order to plot in what happens where. The call to adventure, arrival of new world, the tools they get, the temptations they get, the confrontation with power, and on and on and on. But there's a lot of different beat sheets, go back to that section, that you could choose between. You can choose plot-centered beat sheets. You could choose romance beat sheets if your book is primarily a romance. You could choose ones where it's primarily a mystery and they're trying to solve a mystery. There's a short story version for short works. There's a character builder in here now where you can track who's my protagonist, who's my antagonist, who's my relationship character, to make sure that you haven't left anybody out. And again, this information thing will tell you what that means. There's a world building thing that should have 100% more than your reader will ever know. And it will give you an idea of how they would act, what would be around, resources, setting, and culture that makes these characters who they are. And then, of course, your story premise up here at the top. So the inspiration tab is also available for nonfiction. They have their own specific set of beats. They have an audience avatar, who you're aiming your nonfiction book for, persuasive versus historical versus informational versus self-help. It's all going to be there under the inspiration studio for that, so that you can plot your beats and your story out, or your book out rather, for nonfiction. So if you're coming in here to start from scratch, you have no book, you have a great idea, you would probably come in here and write in the system, use the voice to text, use these cool little tracking features that are new up here at the top, maybe flesh out your work if you're a planner using the builders. And then once your book is written, before you jump into fixing grammatical errors and typos, you're going to want to do your developmental edit. And that is where their newest and biggest tool from the end of 2023 comes into play. That would be the story analyzer. The fiction analyzer is the one that I use the most because I primarily write fiction. I have one nonfiction, but they have both a fiction and nonfiction version. So if I click on the story analyzer, because I have identified my chapters up here, I can run the analyzer for beta reader style feedback. Right now, as of January 2024, the fiction analyzer is still in beta. This is a new tool. There are a few snags that are being ironed out. If you dive too greedily and too deep, maybe you will hit one of them, although a lot have been ironed out. So if you did get in here and start seeing anything weird, send it over to AutoCrit support team, either via this little help bubble right here in the bottom right hand corner, or by emailing support@autocrit.com. Don't comment here on my YouTube because I can't really help you by myself. On my YouTube, you need to reach out to AutoCrit if you're having trouble with this step. All right. So the Fiction Analyzer beta is meant to act like an objective beta reader. It is meant to act like a reader who knows nothing about your book, and it is not meant to be an editor like your technical line editors and things. So you would not come to this section to be told all of your grammatical errors and typos. There are other reports for that. You would come here for plot, for character development, for world building, for tracking your plot threads, to make sure that each chapter reads like it matches the genre you're writing in. And I will show you guys all of that in a second. But I'm a developmental editor by trade, so I was very curious about how good this was going to be. If you send me your book as a writer to edit, I'm going to start at the beginning. I'm going to leave you inline comments throughout your entire book if I'm doing a developmental edit. And then once I've read the whole book, I'll leave you a critique, usually 3 to 5 to 7 pages long, based on how much there was to critique. If you put a book into this system and you don't let it read the chapters first, it cannot give you an overall review of your book. Just like I could not give you an overall critique of your book without having read your book. That'd be a little unreasonable to ask of me. And because of how it's built in the system, you need to treat it sort of like that human beta reader. Let it read your chapters first, then run the story analyzer for the full book over here in this grayed out tab. So I can't run that right now because it hasn't read anything. All right, so let's have it read. Analyzing all chapters is now as easy as a click of a button. This is one of the upgrades from when it originally loaded back in November of 2023. So you click Analyze All Chapters, and it's going to start reading and giving overview information on a chapter by chapter basis. And maybe you're thinking that doesn't matter a lot. Maybe it's because I'm a developmental editor that my first thought was that's probably one of the most helpful tools in AutoCrit's suite of services. Here's why. It is not helpful to see in a big overview that you drop off a plot thread somewhere, that a character goes missing somewhere, that you have issues with world building somewhere without having specific examples. That's why the inline comments that a developmental editor or a professional trained beta reader will leave for you. Not talking about your friend that read your book for free. That's a different kind of beta reader. You know, there's 2 beta readers. Let me just get it out there. There are trained beta readers like me and my peers. We are university or professionally trained developmental editors. We leave much deeper feedback on a beta read because we know how to explain why something works and does not work. If we tell you we don't like something, we can tell you why it isn't working there. Whereas a casual beta reader, which is still valuable, serves a different purpose. They are meant to be that gauge for where the book's going to hit with your audience, but they won't always know how to tell you what is wrong. And this report tells you where you've messed up. So if they say, hey, what happened to that character? And people who've read The Violet Twisted Fate, as my sister likes to point out, what happens to this side character, Cliffin? And I was like, I honestly have no idea what happened to Cliffin. And I'm just going to tell you guys the way it is. I forgot what happened to go back and put. So in the expanded edition, I did have to go back and put what happened to Cliffin. But if I had run this report first, which it wasn't available a few years ago, then I would have known exactly which chapter, because this breaks it down by chapter. And I could see when the last time Clifton shows up in a chapter is by going to the character section, and then I could have fixed it instead of just wondering and guessing. If it says there's not enough world building, I can go chapter by chapter to the world building and see which chapters don't have world building, because that is one of my weaknesses. I've had the analyzer on the Slayer Queen tell me there is no world building in this chapter. And when I went back and looked, sure enough, all I had was plot and dialogue. So I had to go in and add, where is this set? What does it smell like? How many other people or creatures are around them? What's going on? What does she hear? What does she feel? What's the temperature? Bring me into this scene. Bring this world to life. And you can see which chapters are struggling with those aspects. All right, so it's finished running. It ran in 27 seconds. This is, of course, just a couple chapters. And I am streaming live, which is going to slow this down. Here we go. So we have synopsis here. Synopsis is great for pantsers like me because it tells us what's happening in chapter 1. Chapter 1, which is titled Trading Fates, and it gives you a little summary. This is not meant to be a synopsis for an agent, by the way. This is more of a reader keeping up with what happens. However, summary is also where you're going to come to see points of view, who the protagonist is. Make sure your protagonist is established. So the chapter is written from third person limited point of view. That's great. That's what I want it to be. Primarily follows the perspective of the royal nurse. Now, this is because it's sort of a prologue here. So if I scroll down to what I've actually titled chapter 1, I look in the synopsis there. This chapter opens with Freya. She's the main character. It should open with her. This is a fantasy, and the main characters are almost always named at the beginning or established in the beginning. Remember that dinkus I told you guys about for the head hopping? Head hopping is indicated by a dinkus, the 3 asterisks, the tilde. It has the smarts to know when that shift happens. So it sees the tilde there, and it says the chapter then shifts to the princess in her room, what she's talking about from her POV. You can see all of that there. There's conflict in here. There's world building, as I already said. It'll break down what you describe. No specific mention of this. No specific mention of that. Resources. I'm mentioning a grimoire. I mentioned that there's candles. I'm establishing setting and time and culture. Contradiction events. Some of these are going to be purposeful contradictions or contradictions that build on each other. Sometimes they don't. So, for example, it mentions that the nurse has blood splattered on her apron and clothes from the queen's blood. Later, when she arrives at the orphanage, it's the headmistress who says she takes a look at her blood spattered attire. And then it says, this implies the nurse still has visible bloodstains on her clothes even after running through the rain and mud. Okay, if she has blood on her apron and clothes, she's running through the pouring rain, why does she still have blood spattered on her clothes? Is it stained? I don't say it's stained. The headmistress uses a spell to darken the windows. However, earlier in the chapter, it said that every light was dimmed already except for one candle. So it could catch those contradiction events right away. Your timeline will occur here so that you know to track those beats we talked about earlier on your beat sheet. This is where you could come up with what happens when for those beats. These events set up the main story so that I know that this is my life before beat or my setup beat. Foreshadowing is where it, like a reader, is going to guess where the story's going based on what you've established. Imagine this as being little hints that you're cookie crumbling around for your readers to follow. And then the biggest one for me after world building is plot threads. This tells me which plot threads I have established for readers. These are the promises. You have made promises to your readers that they are going to get a resolution to the plots by the end of this book. When you have the analyzer run through the entire book the first time, it's going to give you an overview report just like any beta reader would. But just like if you handed me your book and said, hey, I know I have trouble tracking plot threads, Katherine, so would you please take extra care with those? Then I'm going to really poke holes into all your plot threads way more than I would normally do in just an overview, because I'm looking for where you broke them. And the same thing here. If I click on this rerun button, it reruns that section. It rereads the chapter essentially. And it's been told, reread this chapter and give me feedback on this one thing. And it does. And it breaks it all out. So now I have 4 main plot threads that as the story progresses should either be resolved or should be built upon to go further in the series. And then the genre. As you guys know, I write dark epic fantasy. Sometimes my books start out with a noble, bright feel, which is what I've done with the Lord's Gambit series. The first couple chapters usually start out a little noble, bright, except for the first book. But the rest are all really, really dark. Once it hits about a third of the way in, the book gets dark, and I'm sorry, you guys, it doesn't get better. So I definitely want to start out with that lighter feel, which is what I have here in chapter 1. Combination of fantasy. It's got some suspense. It has magic. It's got a castle setting. It has impending danger that's going to hint into the darkness that comes up later on as the book goes on. But that shouldn't be clear. And if I want to go deeper on this one, for example, I could write that there. Based on the content and style, this would be fantasy. By the time I hit chapter 4, this should definitely come across as dark, and it will tell you that. All right, so that's the analyzer on chapters. Once you've had it run through the chapters, you can then have it run through the full story by clicking fiction analysis and the arrow run circle here to the right of story analysis here. This is now running for the whole book. It's going to give you the premise, your through lines on all of those conflicts, your plot thread tracks through the entire book, the theme analysis, and the genre. Because I've only loaded the first couple chapters in here, it can only give me tracking through the first couple chapters. I've done first chapter critiques for people a very long time. I feel like that's one of the most common requests I get is, hey, can you read my first chapter and tell me if it's any good? This can give you that analysis on whatever 3,000, 5,000 words you've plugged into it. But if you want the full book from beginning to end, then you really need to have run the full book from beginning to end. So story analysis is going to tell you which of your threads were left dangling at the end. You can come back and resolve those, as you can see right here. Several plot threads remain unresolved at this point, and honestly, they should all be unresolved at this point. There's only the first 2 chapters. The ultimate fate and destiny of the princess, the nature of Freya's dissatisfaction with the armor and how it's going to affect her battles, tensions between Freya and the King Regent, Freya and Norcross, aka Karma, little tiny spoiler there, suggest brewing conflicts, different themes that I need to make more prominent, deepen my character development, explore consequences of the prejudice that we've been following ever since the beginning of the Lord's Gambit series. That should be growing and growing and growing. And then genre conformity. High fantasy genre conditions by addressing these things. So that's sort of the premise of the analyzer. It's a very powerful tool. It does take a little bit of adjusting. I think it should be used as a reference point. If you are new to developmental editing, there's a chance that when you get in here, you may not know what to do with this data. So you might see that it says your POV changes and you don't know what to do. And so you want to then exit out of this. You can save these points too, by the way. You can click on these yellow notepads and that will save it to notes so that when you close out, you've got your notes real time. Here it is. Synopsis, and just make your bullet points and work through them. But if it was POV, for example, and it says you're shifting between first and third person, you can go to POV consistency right here and run this report and fix your POV. If you're looking to change the mood in a setting, so this is first, second, third person, you can go through these words and make sure that they actually are being used in dialogue. And if not, fix them because you have them in the wrong POV, most likely. You could go into strong writing and change your tenses. You can change your showing versus telling. You can get rid of your cliches. There's so much that goes into bringing this all together, and that's where I think that checklist has been really helpful for me. It's keeping track of which ones I should be looking at which point in my journey. So the rest of AutoCrit's reports are pretty much the same as the prior video from last year, which I will link in the description box, showing how I used the other reports in editing my own books back in 2023. There's still the summary report. If you guys are looking, there's a big difference between the fiction analyzer, which is developmental, it is not technical editing, and summary report, which is technical. It is not developmental editing. So just because your book meets the style of 85% of the other books in its genre, that does not mean that your story's content is scoring a pass-fail 85%. They are two different tools, and that's why they exist on two different tabs. So that is just a very quick overview of all the new things that have been going on in AutoCrit in 2024. I'm very curious to hear if you've used any of these tools, especially if you're watching and you're a nonfiction writer who's considering using AutoCrit for the first time. What did you think of them? How did you use them? How many books have you run through them? Do you have any suggestions for anybody? My suggestion personally would be, again, to not upload formatting into here. I think AutoCrit is great for authors who are either starting drafting the first time or ready to upload a book for strong revisions and edits. I don't think AutoCrit is great for people who have already published an ebook and they just want to plug in an ebook and have a system autocorrect your stuff. You need to go back and dig out your .doc file.